morning, all of you. I hope you can hear me well because I'm a little bit close. So later on, if you want to speak up, because I'm also a little bit deaf, unfortunately. So I want to talk about the web 2.0, and it's more like a reality check. So what does it mean, and is it really going to, what is it going to promise us, and are we going to use it, and how can we use it, and so on. But obviously, it's more, I want to raise more questions than actually giving any answers. So I'd like to hear from you during the Q&A. First question for you guys. Does anybody here use Rolio? No? This one, Newsweek. You do? Wow, that's cool.
I know the developers, so.
All right. Do you post on it?
No.
No. You do not have an account, but you read it.
Yeah.
Okay. This one, 30 boxes. You do that too? Oh, you're great.
That's what I do.
Which is a calendar. Swiki? Yeah. Well, I was actually thinking, does anybody know what a Swiki is? Well, it's basically, it's being promoted, and you can read it here as well, as a natural extension of personal publishing on the web. This is saying that you can create web pages, blogs, or podcasts, and you can use this tool for your community, and it's a powered search engine for your own community. So you can, it's tailored to produce only like targeted search results that your community is actually using. Or one, hopefully. How they, you see the cloud of buzz, because it's still relatively new. It says a Swiki shows a buzz cloud, so what is important within your community, and it shows you what is hot within your community. And so it makes it easy to find the best content that are people discussing within the community and using info on the web. Another one, Yellow Arrow. This is basically, this is a social network that probably everybody, I assume. Who has heard of Yellow Arrow? Okay, so a few people have heard of it, other people haven't. It's a spatial annotation project that started in Brooklyn, New York, and anyone can mark places of interest with a yellow sticker and tell a story about that particular place. So people print out and place yellow arrows in a public place of their own choice. And they make a digital photo, often, and post that image with a personal description on the website, and that links to a map on the website. And when people come across that yellow arrow somewhere in a public space, they can call from their mobile phone and access the information on the website. So for instance, this is another explanation. This is an example of somebody posting a yellow arrow. So there's a number on there you can call, and the person who put that sticker out there left a message for you. One in the car, on bottles, newspapers. So basically it shows an offline, online community mix over across platforms where people try to do some social networking without actually knowing each other, but trying to inform each other. So what we like to think now is the web is where we live. It has gone from a state where you saw, try to understand the internet as a place where you would go to, and now we see it more as you're not going to the internet, you do things on the internet. So it's one place to go to do things to do. At the same time, it's also seen as a side, because we are now doing things over there, it's a way to express ourselves in various ways. It could be blogs, it could be about your favorite bank, but it could also be a company and so on. And it means to connect with other people and extend our own horizons. So now talking about the Web 2.0, which is like this whole, relatively new buzzword. This also, of course, assumes that there was a Web 1.0. So let's talk about that a little bit. So basically what, is this one? And not very good picture. So the Web 2.0, if you think about it, let me give you some examples. Like Netscape is like an old software paradigm. Basically, the flagship product was the web browser, so like the desktop application, and the strategy was to use their dominance in the browsing market to establish a market for high-powered server products. If you think about Google, in contrast, that began its life as a native web application, and it was never sold or packaged, but it was delivering a service where customers can pay directly or indirectly for the use of that service. So the central principle behind the success of the giants such as Google, such as Netscape, and Yahoo, that were born in the Web 1.0 era, to have survived and went on to the Web 2.0 era, appears to be that they have embraced the power of the web to harness collective intelligence that we heard yesterday. So examples are hyperlinking, which is obviously the foundation of the web. But it's used to add new content and new sites. It's bound into the structure of the web itself, but other users discovering it and linking other content to it. Also, Google's breakthrough with regard to, or in search, which quickly made it into a very undisputed search market leader, was PageRank, for instance, which was a method of using the link structure of the web rather than just the characteristics of the documents to provide better search results. Another example, eBay's product is the collective activity of all its users. So like the web itself, eBay grows organically in response to user activities. The company's role, therefore, is just that has become an enabler of a context in which user activity can happen, so that they're providing a space for that. What's more, eBay's competitive advantage comes almost entirely from the critical mass of buyers and sellers, which makes any new entrant offering similar services significantly less attractive. So if you think about other innovative companies online that pick up on this insight of trying to engage people, users, consumers, audiences, whatever you want to call them, into this insight of interaction among people, whether it's social networking or all the other ways, which I will talk about later, then you can also, for instance, now talk about Wikipedia. Who is using that? Yeah, I don't think so. People using Delicious, right? Flickr. Are there people who have never heard of those sites? No? Okay, that's great. So you have like all these different sites who do different things. So like collaborative spam filtering or well, like photo sharing like Flickr and so on. That's what's being referred to as the Web 2.0. This came about basically last year with a conference which is actually called 2.0 by Tim O'Reilly. And he made a list for the core competencies of what Web 2.0 should mean. Let's see if I have the right slide. Yeah, it's something a little more about this. So let's go a little bit further. I just gave you a few examples of a few companies that we think we see as social networking companies or that offer these kind of service online. If you think about about it in terms of data, then it basically means that it's all about data. The location, the identity, offering calendaring, public events, product identifiers, namespaces, any kind of that kind of data is the opportunity for companies to have like almost an Intel Insight play with a single source of that data from that online. So an aggregation in terms of aggregated data into a system service. So software as a service is what it's all about. Software is no longer a product that you should sell. You're trying to use your software from a business perspective. You would think about it in that way. As a service to your potential clients. You're offering a space where users must be treated as co-developers within that space. So in the reflection, for instance, of open source development practices, so the open source dictum, for instance, is release early and release often. In fact, that has morphed into a way more radical position, which is called the perpetual beta, in which the product is developed, it's open, with new features slipstream into a monthly, weekly, or even a daily basis, and it's no accident that those kind of services, such as Gmail, Google Maps, Flickr, Delicious, and all the other ones, may be expected to be our beta level for a really, really long time, and it's being continuously updated. Well, also another one is, I talked a little bit about services, about participation, cost-effective. Obviously, when you work on or see software as a service, that means that, and if you also invite your consumer or other people to co-develop what you're working on, it also means it becomes way more cost-effective. At the same time, the software and programming should be very easy, made very simple, because otherwise people will use it, and it's really complicated. So there's an exploring these principles that are strategic positioning, user positioning, and the core competencies. I've highlighted some of the principal features of the Web 2.0. And each of these examples demonstrate one of the more of these key principles, but may miss others. So for example, let's close by summarizing what I believe to be the key aspects of the Web 2.0. Well, services, first of all, so they're not packaged with software with cost-effective scalability. The second one is control over unique, hard to recreate data resources that get richer as more people use them. The third one would be trusting users, which is really important, trusting users as co-developers. And the fourth one would be harnessing collective intelligence. Fifth one, leveraging the long tail through customer self-services. And software should be taken above the level of a single device, so it's going to be across platforms. So not only online on your computer, but also mobile phones, your iPod, and whatever else you're using. And it should be very lightweight or easy to use user interfaces, development models, and especially business models. As we heard yesterday, that business models should be changed in a lot of ways. So looking at this one, then on the left side is what we think or assume what the Web 1.0 was. So it was analog, the Web 2.0, it's not exactly, of course, it's not that black and white. It centralized the sport of mass media to social media, from information to collective intelligence, from old metrics to new realities. And that was social by default, this is social by design, so architectural design for participation. So this is a short summary of what I believe are the key aspects of 2.0. So the web, it's connected with all these different devices across platforms. It's really about reusable services and data. It's about data consumption, remixing from all these different sources that are online, that are offline, that are wireless, that are on different media platforms. It's an architecture of participation which encourages users' contribution. Operations is the core. Simple programming so people can actually use it. It's all about operations across platforms, so if you develop some software, it should not only do the one from the website. Rich user experiences related to interactive user interfaces. Another Google again. Who knows this slide? Yeah. Okay, so Google has bought this website recently, towards the end of last year. This is a mobile phone social networking application. It was recruited, actually it was developed by what's his name, Paul Rademacher, and he was the one who came up with the housingmaps.com. Who actually, he was really, last year, he gained a lot of attention because he was working on Google Maps, and he linked that to Graaf's list, and then he put the two together, and then he became a really hot shot, and now that's why he was hired by Google to develop this site as a mobile social networking site. Again, this is an example of the Web 2.0. The question is, do they make money out of it? Who knows? I don't know that. Yet, and that's, I think, with a lot of examples that I will show, the profitability is still a little bit uncertain. So I will talk about them later. So this is an example of Google, so the big companies buying this. Flickr, bought by Yahoo. Anybody has their album on Flickr? 1, 2, 3 people. Cool. So here you can share your pictures. Flagger, you can share it. People use this? No, this is another website where you can share your favorite places on Earth by taking pictures, but also by sending text messages and put them online. Invite other people to it. Wikipedia, well, actually, everybody's familiar with it, so I'm not going to explain everything, but as you can see, it's also translated in lots of different sites or different countries. So you have the English one, you have even a Dutch one, but I don't think you can see it on here. So you have it in many, many countries. And some of it gets directly translated from, for instance, the English side into Dutch, for instance, but also a lot of times the Dutch would just come up with their own ideas themselves. Reddit, which is a source for what's new and popular online. And you can vote also, so if a lot of people vote for your story that you put on there, it will become much higher up in the ranks. So again, another form of social networking online where people like to interact with each other. Notion, I think a lot of people know this. It's similar to the one I showed before, the Newsweek. It's where people work on producing news and people can edit it and so on. So rather than going to, for instance, the CNN website, they would go to a site like this. And we had a discussion about this yesterday. And people like to interact here and rather than go to a mainstream website. Because they like to interactivity, some people like to think that they know it better or they like just to write. I mean, there's a million reasons out there why people go here. Well, delicious, another example again. Inkling, as how they describe themselves, is that it's an online marketplace where people buy and sell shares and stocks, representing what they think will happen in the future. So that's very interesting. So it hasn't exactly happened yet. But the stock with the highest price represents what the crowd thinks is going to happen. So Inkling does not use real money, so I have to say that. Traders exchange the Inkle or Inkling, which is an imaginary currency. So again, another form of interaction that people are interested in. So if you think about these few examples and there are many, many more, is how on earth can you use this to run a business on web-based software? Well, I'm not going to give you any answers. because, for obvious reasons that I will come to the next slide, is that increasingly online software delivery provides more usability, convenience, and value for your company. I mean, that's what it seems like heading for. The flexibility, the mobility, and the connectedness among people, people who use that web software, is it's growing really, really fast. If you see the amount of websites out there, think about MySpace, for instance, or the Friendsters, the LinkedIn's, the OpenBCs, the Delicious, the Reddits, whatever, and the other examples I gave you. It's there. You cannot ignore it. Many of it, whether it's conscious or not, we are doing and using a lot of our daily work in or online. We are active in there, and we not necessarily go there just to retrieve information. Or maybe I should speak for myself. I go there and do things. So by either using these applications hosted on the web or inside our organizations, we use all different kinds of web technologies. A lot of people now, for instance, the company that I used to work for last year, people were using MSN rather than sending each other emails or walking over to somebody else's desk. So all kinds of web technologies are being used within companies, but also to communicate to consumers. So along with this, the people-powered aspects of Web 2.0 software are causing the developers to add features to their online software to make pieces more open and shareable, to draw people into these useful communities. So if you look at the software online, a lot of these new developments are being followed or first being used by the early adopters in the business community. My take is that it is happening and we need to pay attention to it, but it hasn't barely started. Just to give you a few examples of Web 2.0, as I've been able to find online, where how people have been describing how Web 2.0 technologies are being used. I have lots of examples of names of software that you can fill in. So to-do lists, calendars, blog filters, contacts, but also within companies you will see project management software and so on. So there's lots of possibilities, there's lots of software out there that you can actually use for different purposes to engage or re-engage differently with your consumers. Looking at this, so where do we believe, how can you scale these communities? How many people are there, and do you need 100% of consumers? Well, I would say that the levels in this pyramid represent bases of value creation. So, for instance, if you look at the Yahoo groups, 1% of the user population might start a group or a thread within a group. So 10% of these user populations might actually participate actively in that group. And actually the author, the content, whether you start a thread or when you're responding in a thread, is very, there's just maybe 10% people who do that. The 100% of the user population, therefore, is not necessarily active, but they do benefit from the activities of the one and the other 10% of the groups, because they have become workers and they will learn from what they see, and they may, think about what they've read and may act differently offline, or are influenced by what they have read and may buy or may not buy one of their products. Coming to the dynamics of the media industries. If you think about media industries, is that a lot of them try to look for ways to adapt to the digital era. And companies like MTV, Sony, BMG, but also film industries, you've heard also News Corporation, they bought MySpace, which is integrated now in Fox Interactive. I mean, what are these companies trying to do? They know they have to do something with the internet, but they're not really sure what to do. At least that's my understanding of it. If you want to look at or try to develop insight into the creation and management of what these online communities do, what they try to do. You can study or try to find ways to use these communities or the behavior of people online and see how you can make innovative market creation strategies. So looking at trying to figure out what is it that people do, what's out there, what is Web 2.0, how do people behave. If you try to understand that and then link that to what it is that your company wants to achieve, you can use them as a strategic business tool. Like we heard yesterday, Robert talking about actions. Yes, action is one thing, so you have to get that knowledge back, imply it back into strategy formation of your company. What's important in that is, I think, is that these communities or social networking and so on are an emerging side for revenue opportunities to expand markets, to re-engage your consumer, to extend your brand loyalty and so on by increasing return on investments. Looking at it from that perspective, it means thinking about your consumers, thinking about what that means, how you can build trust relationship with your consumers, because obviously a lot of us would like to think we have control of what we do. We may have that to a certain extent, but it also shows that consumers would like to do different things than we would like to do, or what we would like to see them do, which means that we have to rethink what means what our company or department does. What do we want? Do we want to sell a product? Do we want to sell a service? How are we going to do that? And what does that mean for the boundary? Who are we? Who are they? So you have all that dynamic, that interaction needs to be redefined. It's no longer very simple that you have a target group with people 17 to 21 interested in so and so, because it turns out to be, it is changing the way we should think about our consumers. We should change our marketing models and our business models accordingly. If we're working on that, which I actually tried to do in my PhD, hopefully we are able to understand and get and learn actually from looking at our consumers. We put that back into strategy formation within the company, so the company can innovate, adapt, and learn from that, and hopefully sustain performance and competitive advantage. Yeah, I have a few examples. For instance, I don't know if you know of the suicide bills that one. We're not going to talk about whether these women are empowered or not, because that's a whole different discussion. But let's say they have found a good way to do business online. It's an erotic site with punk girls who, it's like Playboy, but then punk girls and goth girls with tattoos and piercings and so on. And they've really built a very successful community. It's only $4 a month, which basically everybody can afford. They have, well, about 2 weeks ago, they had 1,024 suicide girls, so those are the girls who like to portray themselves and put pictures of themselves. There are lots of pictures. There are more than 10,000 articles. You can see the guy over there. That's Dave Navarro. He's a very famous rock artist in that scene. You know, it's really cool. He's actually married now to Carmen Electra. So it's all a little bit of the deviant kind of community. As you can see, everybody has their own journal, so it's a blog, but they call it journals there. You can see how many minutes ago somebody put their last entry, active threads, there's group discussions. They have Suicide Girl Radio, which Missy is actually one of the owners of this website. It's Sundays at midnight till 2 a.m. So you have video, radio. This is a thread where you can actually, you see Suicide Girls live from left to right, so you can actually also go and see them somewhere. So it's not only online, it's also in real life. There's blogs, there's news sections. This is actually Will Wheaton, an actor, who's blogging on this side too. I'm sure he gets money for that thing, or maybe he doesn't have to pay his monthly fee, who knows? Suicide Girls also have a profile on MySpace. Every day it's another girl, so they attract a lot of people traffic through that site as well. They compare, and you know, the regular merchandise like every company has. So they have found this niche market of online erotic, well, not deep, but a little bit, you know, on the darker side. Well, News Corporation, MySpace, I don't really have to be really wrong about this because I'm pretty sure everybody knows about MySpace. Even here, it started out a lot with the music and film communities. It's more, now you see a lot of upcoming bands and filmmakers and so on try to promote their work. Are the people here have a MySpace profile? You see, that's quite a lot of people. Actually, it's quite funny. I was in New York and I met a few people in a bar, and they gave me their business cards. And then the next morning, I typed them in MySpace because I thought every American is on MySpace. Or so it's. I don't really necessarily know what to do. This is actually my profile. Because I think if you study something, you should be part of it. But actually, I really like it. Also, it's a way for me to connect or stay in touch with people that I've met, like in LA and Japan and so on. So it's quite fun. And it's nice to see all those pictures and recognize rather than sending too many emails all the time. This is Wendy's. They also have a MySpace profile. And you can also see they have lots of friends. So there are people actually interested in being linked to Wendy's. Not sure yet why, but I tried to figure that out. Well, I don't really have lots of time anymore, but if you look at gaming communities, a lot of game companies such as Epic or Valve, they, well, besides that they develop games and put them out there, a lot of them also give away their sources. They make them open and free for people to modify. They're not necessarily free, but if you buy a game, you usually also get the tools to be able to make modifications. So this is like the Unreal Engine 3, that's an example of one of them. So if you have access to this, whether you buy it or pay for it, you could potentially create your own modifications to games. Also, you do not necessarily have to pay for it because there's a lot of people who just put that online for free, this kind of information. So if you're really into that, you just have to Google and find all this information, how you can create navigation tools or maps, and so on, adding weapons and lights. Here are a few examples of actually amateur mods or ads in games. Red Orchestra was so popular, which is a mod, and now it has become its own game in itself. An example is also, for instance, Valve. They had created a game. It was so popular, but the modification Counter-Strike became much more popular. So they bought that back and implemented it back into their own company. So they've learned a lot by looking at what consumers were interested in. You see now that the online platform Steam has become really popular. It also means that they can circumvent publishers because they can distribute their own games online directly to their own network. And they have also developer community where they directly interact with gamers. And you can almost say, well, besides that gamers are not getting paid, everything is equal on that level. They tell what they would like to see, what they would like to get. They would actually offer their own creations, their own game developers, their own mods and so on. And not necessarily mods, some people just come with game ideas and so on. And there's a really good, or so far it has been really getting a lot of positive feedback from Valve. And I think it has become, I think it's actually turning into a revolution within the gaming industry to see how they do business. And I think the gaming industry is a really good example to see how you can interact with consumers. And it is all about content, but they're not really afraid to interact with the gamers, rather than looking at the music industries, for example, or the movie industries that are still terrified what people can do with their content. So I think I should leave it with this. Sure. Okay.
Thank you very much. All right, who'd like to start off with questions?
So we were talking, yesterday about Henry brought up that visibility was a variable that was really kind of exploded this fan base with this fan culture, and what we're talking about with users or wikis, it also seems like another variable where we're using shared knowledge or collective knowledge as a tool. One question I have about that is, if you make an initial offering commercially, and you sell that offering, and you open it up to be modified or expanded upon by, a fan base, how do you then, in that example you gave of War 2 mod for Unreal, how do they buy it back, or how does that mechanism work where, I would think that, and again, I think you'd be fair to your fan base, but I would think the initial offering would have rights to any modification that someone put into it. Is that not?
Right.
How does that get rectified?
Right. So you mean because not every mod obviously is being brought back into the game?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think, let's say from a business perspective, it's all about money. So like Red Orchestra or Counter-Strike, they became so more popular than the games that were originally developed by these game companies or game developers. That to them it was like, well, apparently we may have overlooked something. It could be that our distribution may not have been best, which was actually the case for Valve and Counter-Strike. Counter-Strike really came up with a revolutionary way of distributing people all over the engines. So that's what they learned, and that's actually for Valve a way to start working on it and looking into that problem. And that's how they came up with Steam, which is a whole new distribution model. But they learned that through looking at gamers, because they were fed up with Valve, because it took ages to get access to the games and so on. Besides that, Counter-Strike became really popular in the underground circles. So for Valve, it was really a way to also, let's say, the owner had a lot of money in the beginning, so they didn't really care that people took their games and started making modifications. But they thought, well, if you can do it in such a way and interact with them, and we offer a lot of money, then we may be able to access that whole gamer community base. But we have to do obviously in such a way that it's subtle and not that we impose the Valve, company structure on it. And so far they have succeeded in doing that. They have been really flexible and in a way very laid back. Obviously the people, the core group who created Counter-Strike, they got money. And actually they now work at Valve. But they used to work, I think when we moved on to the contract or something. But for these guys, they got a job out of it, which happens for a lot of times. But it was really that it was very popular among gamers. So Valve was like Google. Why would they buy Dodgeball? They just think there is a community, or News Corporation with MySpace. Like, well, if there's so many people, there must be something to it. So let's own it before it gets out of control. And for Valve, it was like, well, it's based on our game. So let's buy it and learn from it and build this new platform and impose some sort of structure to it, but let's keep it open. So we won't really feel too much of a power relation or struggle between the company and the consumer. And I must say, I'm going to have interviews soon with the people from Valve, so hopefully then will tell me a little bit more about how that edge, that blurred boundary, how that works and how they deal with that.
Right. This may be related to the question you were asking, forgive me if it duplicates it. It's one thing to hire people from the modification community. In a perfect world, there'd be a more delicate model for rewarding people according to the value they contribute. Yeah. Is there anything like that in the works that you've seen?
Well, I must say, not in terms of money,
Right.
but they like the value of recognition within that community.
Right.
And I've noticed that that's really important. A lot of them, especially like within gaming worlds, for instance, like going to certain levels and achieving particular stages and ranks within games, that's what seems to matter more than actually getting them up and running to most of these people.
Yeah. And can I just ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
Is there anybody working on what we might call a kind of recognition economy? Where people are effectively getting paid because they're known to be somebody who made an important contribution?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of money, yes, there's a lot of articles now appearing on like Second Life.
No, I'm actually talking about, if we think about recognition as a capital
Right.
that's getting distributed to people, that's how, as you were saying, that's one of the ways they
Right.
get.
Not that I really know, but I'm sure there must be people trying to work on it, yeah, because it's very obvious. Yeah.
So, I mean, one of the things that strikes me as interesting, and perhaps for some of you guys, I'm just interested to know where this is moving. What a lot of these sites are doing is circumventing the traditional mailing. So something like corrosion, well, you don't need the New York Times anymore, you can go with people broker. You need the Times in a way as a source, but you can broker that data one to another without the traditional mailing. But it sounds like with some of these sites that that's also happening in the marketing sector. If you think of how Inkling works, or how Squeaky works, where you're looking at constellations of buzz, that traditionally marketers would have looked for that data, and now suddenly communities are self-organizing to articulate that, and can sort of spot the demographics pretty quickly. But if you put that together with something like the movement attentiontrust.org, where the remuneration is not about creators, but about the attention. If I'm going to look at your ad, why pay the ad agents? Pay me. Give me a micropayment because I'm going to spend 30 seconds looking at this thing. That erosion of the middleman seems to now be creeping into the world of marketing, and maybe even advertising as well. And I'm just curious as to, are you guys making use of any of these sites where buzz is being defined by communities? And B, do you guys see that as a long-term threat here?
The answer is no, we're not using those sites except as maybe a means to deliver an audience, so advertising. And the fundamental question that we're asking ourselves is, hey, we understand the value of an audience, we don't understand the value of the community. So how do we make money off of the community?
Go on Grant's question a little bit on Williams. Amazon monetizes my recommendations through the Amazon social program. Maybe the rate I get from Amazon, if you follow on the link from my site to Amazon and buy a book, then I get a percentage of that sale. And it's a better deal than my publisher offer. So, they've got a model that clearly motivates me to go out and recommend their service over any other online service. So why couldn't we imagine a modding system that worked in very similar ways, where the whole pitch for modding is if you play my mod, you've got to buy the game. So why shouldn't I get a percentage of the sale of the game for every game that's sold to play my mod? Why not build in some sort of connection? I know it's easier to trace the breadcrumbs from me to Amazon to the book sale than it is through the game sale, but there ought to be the gaming community, the modding community should be beginning to form those relationships with companies, leave aside the company's investment. And it's no longer should be enough that the company gives away its access to the tools to mod, and that's where you go. You should go to the company that offers you the best deal for the value you're generating. But these fans and modders are invisible engines of money within this economy. And the criticism of the mining economy is that it's exploitative labor, that you're essentially outsourcing for free to your consumer, and that the creative workers are going to be displaced by this outsourced free labor. So it'd be much better in the long term if we began to think about some economic systems that supported the production of new content. Will Wright with The Sims has sort of allowed people to sell content produced for The Sims through their sites and generate some revenue off it. And I talked to him about it, and he said that he was realizing those people were eating up bandwidth to support his game, that they were generating a lot of revenue for The Sims, and he wanted ways that they could at least recoup their cost of production by getting some revenue stream. And he had to fight with NEA to get them to recognize the value, and rewrite the terms of use and recognize the value of that relationship.
Dan?
Yeah, just to answer Grant's question and to what Henry just said, if you spend any time in Second Life and if you follow the forums and you follow the numbers blogs, You become aware of the group that is being called the embedded human core, Joe knows about it. And this is a group of the very active content producers, right? Independent content producers in Second Life create all sorts of cool stuff, for shops, for buildings, right? And these people who are the most active, the most visible members of the 200,000 community also get contracts from the company when the company has contracts. These all sorts of people. So this is sort of way to compensate for the energy. Very tangible way.
That's really interesting. I think that seems like that would be the next generation is building into the contract or building into the agreement or the strategy around launching an application or a product ahead of time instead of having that happen, naturally with happening now. It's evolving that and saying, okay, we know we're going to harvest our open source, using that open source, fan base to help us update this and make it better. So we're going to start out with that source material and let you guys make it better, because inevitably the shared community is going to, like with people, just make it stronger and stronger as it goes out. But is that what that seems like a lot of the next step is to start designing that in up front and saying, okay, here's how it's going to work. You're going to get this percentage of,
Right. Well, let's say, I find it hard to answer. I would hope so, but on the other hand, I don't think there is going to be a best practice of what the structure should be, because if it's too structured, then people also may run away. It's a very, how do you say it? It's a very fragile interaction that's going on. I mean, let's say you can have a gazillion MySpaces, but there was only one who really took off. And I don't know how long that's going to last. And maybe in 2 months it will be gone, or a year, and that was that. I mean, it's hard to, right now, for me to say, probably everybody has a different opinion, to say, well, yeah, I mean, look at Coca-Cola and CoMusic.com. I think, in a way, they have done pretty well by offering a virtual space where people can hang out, they can meet each other, they can build avatars, but of course, it's not as advanced when you go to like Second Life. It's so different. And one is more about brand recognition, and the other one is way more about playing the game. So it really depends, I think, what you want to achieve for your client, what you want to do. And also, there's cost involved. I mean, you have to buy or to build a whole, virtual space if you're not just thinking about like the community management or forums and so on. So I find it, it's pretty hard, but I would think that that's the way we should go, that you have to have a community-based approach to any kind of product or service that you like to sell. It's a service and innovation rather than a product innovation.
So let me tell you how Second Life makes money, right? $9.95 a month, that's one revenue stream. With that, you can buy land. There's also a land tax. You can buy island for $1,250 plus $150 a month land tax. And if you use their foreign currency exchange to exchange US dollars for Wyndham dollars and back, they're essentially a bank. They make a little bit of transaction costs on that. That's how they make money. Sony at the Austin Game Developers Conference in October said from the podium that the next version, I believe, is EverQuest, which is currently, I think, what's it, $9.95 a month or something? It's a fee, something around that. It's going to be free. And they're going to make money by setting up an eBay marketplace where people can buy and sell items within the game, and that's how they're going to make their money. Because they believe that they'll be able to make more money from all the transactions, because essentially the GDP of the world is more makes more money than the revenue coming from subscriptions. So there's some of the
And I guess, because whenever I talk to folks in the business community about this, they sort of ask the question, saying, remains to be seen how some of these spaces are going to pay themselves, how is MySpace or whatever, and people tend to think in terms of actually dollars per month coming in, whether it's subscription or ad revenue. But I think to overlook the power of the loyalty of the community, which is a delicately constructed, if you have that, well, that's what the goal of advertising is in large part. Or if you think about it now as a market research opportunity for the community to sort of float ideas through, that costs a lot of money. I mean, those things need to be monetized. We tend to think of those as things that are done by others and we pay for them in other ways. But we have to sort of potentially look at that as actually profit in some of these things. So I think you're right. You know, certainly subscription models and land taxes and those are all monetary streams that we can look for dollars.
Yeah.
We have to monetize. It's like monetizing women's work at home. Well, they just do it. We don't think about it as having a dollar value. But in fact, there is a significant contribution going on there. I think one way to help convince some folks in the business world that this is, well, it's why you're buying it up. I mean,
I don't think it is. I mean, I think that's an extremely valuable point, which is what you're saying is this is about branding and it's about market research. And that's kind of, that's a strong answer to give when people start talking about ROI, right? Because you're not measuring ROI on these things. You're looking at them as sort of long-term investments in brand building and in sources of data for marketing research. Those can be turned into ROI, but it's a completely different model than the revenue model that you've been discussing. Just by invoking the term business model, you start to talk about this as a revenue source, right? And subscription models and everything else and advertising models and all that stuff starts to come into play. What you're doing is shifting it around. You know, when my students start talking about this, investing in this, or when we do cases like Toys R Us and their flagship brand store on New York Times, which will never pay out in revenue dollars in any way, but they've seen it as this giant brand building exercise. I get a little nervous about it because, you know, in the hard world of numbers, when you come up to a executive VP or somebody with some real budget making power, and you start talking about brand building, it starts to sound very fuzzy and fluffy. I think your point is extremely well taken. The question is, how do you take that to the next level of putting an economic valuation on it?
and that's where things like attentiontrust.org are interesting, because the minute you start to monetize, or even potentially monetize consumer end attention, which is what all of us are in the business of trying to put in the classroom, pull that in these communities, you've got that, you've got it 100% and 100% plus, because they're building these things themselves. And just think about, what it costs to buy, to know you're actually connecting.
It's true, but attention is a means to another end. The end is revenue creation, right? It goes back. So it's not just the attention by itself, but what does the attention do for you? Being able to trace that. In other words, the qualities of attention. Are the qualities of attention different when I actually intentionally say, okay, here I am, pay me for my time, I'm going to watch your ad. And I'm just kind of zoning out, watching an episode of Lost, and the commercials come and go, and I kind of see them. And is that a different kind of attention? There's one, we don't know yet. I mean, we've been studying whether television advertising actually works or not for about 50 years, and we still don't have an answer. So to try and get
the only way to find out is deprivation.
Well, right. Well, they've done very sophisticated experimental models where they've split cable in the same city, and blocks of you got this commercial, and these ones didn't, and then they measured the sales effects in local markets, and they still don't know. There's nothing of statistical significance that's ever really turned up.
Right, the numbers that are out there,
It's gorgeous, yeah.
the numbers that are there are alarming. I mean, if you just look at the steady decline day after recall, at least according to Nielsen and the National Association of Broadcasters, let's say the metrics that are out there, true or not true, are alarming.
Right.
As the noise in the world increases, the space that people actually attend to gets smaller.
And when there's another, and I don't want to hog the point here, but there's another model that says when you pay that kind of attention to something like an ad, you activate what's called the schemer's schema, which is like, trying to convince me. You're constantly counter-arguing it. It's the way your processing style works. So there's a whole bunch of different forms of attention there, too.
Thank you very much.